Hello and welcome to Dave's Delightful Dishes. As always, I'm Dave and I'm delighted to have you visiting me in my kitchen today. And today we're making patties. Jamaican patties. So to make Jamaican patties, you'd say, well, Dave, what do you know about them? Well, I was raised by a woman from Kingston, Jamaica, who was in her 90s now. And I had her come down and visit. I brought her down to visit me for the holidays. And while we were here, we discussed the fact that I had got this little show going. And she said she would teach me how to make Jamaican patties and how to put them on TV.
Make for TV, make it smaller.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so make it. So here's where we go. We're going to start off with the ingredients. And this is a multi-step process, so don't worry about it. We will get there. Start off for the filling. We need a pound of ground beef, as lean as you can get it. 2 tablespoons of breadcrumbs, plain, although if you've got other types, that's fine too. 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. 2 teaspoons of smoked paprika. A teaspoon of black pepper, fresh ground if you've got it. If not, from the shaker will be fine. 2 teaspoons of season all. Now, when I asked her, she said, "Oh, do you have seasoning?" And I didn't. And I opened up my spice rack and said, "I've got 100 seasonings." And she meant like a season all. This is a Mrs. Dash, but basically anything you got in there that's like an all-purpose seasoning, that'll work. And you want 2 teaspoons of this. You need a 1/3 cup of chicken broth. And then you're probably going to need more, but we're going to start with a 1/3 cup because we want to keep this meat very moist. 1 tablespoon of soy sauce. 1 onion that we've chopped pretty fine. 3 green onions that are sliced. And about 2 tablespoons of freshly grated ginger. I peeled this and grated it myself. And then here's one you got to be careful with: the scotch bonnet. Now, I couldn't find scotch bonnets today, so I have a substitute, which is a habanero pepper. Now, these are hot, and this is very similar to a scotch bonnet as far as your Scoville units. I put rubber gloves on, like latex gloves when I slice this, and I recommend you do too. And whatever you do, once it's pepper time, don't touch your eyes, don't touch your face, don't touch your nose once you start cutting this, because you will regret it. And then we need pie crust. Now, you can make this from scratch, and she said she could, but she said for ease of use, you can get pie crust or puff pastry, and most of the time she uses puff pastry. Now, if you want it to be that golden yellow color that you get when you get them in the store or from people when you get them locally, then what you do is you make yourself pie dough, make yourself pie crust dough, and add turmeric to it, or Jamaican curry if you have that, if you want it to be extra spicy. So that's what's going to give it that sunburst yellow color. These ones won't be quite as yellow, but I'm still going to wash them with an egg wash. So I have 1 egg here, which is going to let them brown up nicely. So first off, let's go ahead and start making the filling. So I've got a nice hot cast iron here. Let me get my vent fan going. And we're going to take this pound of very lean ground beef and put it into our cast iron pan. Gonna break it up a little bit. And we got to brown this meat just like we would any other ground beef recipe. And that is the first step. You want extra lean because we're not going to drain this, so we don't want to have a whole lot of melted fat left over. But there is going to be some, and that is perfectly fine. So you want to chop this up. And then we're going to let this brown. All right, that just took a couple of minutes there. And it's browned up, and you can see there is some fat here, but it's not a ton. And we're going to be adding moisture to it anyway, so let's start off by adding in our seasonings. And you know, when I watched Maude make this, there was not any measurements with anything. So I'm going to start with half of what we have here. Actually, you know what? That is just about right. We're going to add that whole amount of all my seasonings here. In goes that's the pepper and the seasonal and the paprika. That is smoked paprika. And the garlic powder and the soy sauce. And we got to mix all that together. Move this down to a medium low now that I got this like this. And I'm going to add in the breadcrumbs. And now I can't just leave it like this. You want to have it really, really moist. So we're going to add in that third cup to start of our chicken broth. And why chicken broth, he said? Because I said, hey, I've got beef broth. And she goes, no, never go beef to beef. She said, you want to add chicken. And this should be, she said, almost like a stew. She said it should be very wet. So we can see here that it is not. Now I'm going to put that down all the way to low. And I'm going to add a little bit at a time, but I've got another third of a cup here. And you got to play this by eye because your beef might have more fat, so your breadcrumbs might be thirstier. We just need to get it all combined. And as always, these flavors are just coming out real heavy and amazing. So that ends up being, today, there's 2/3 of a cup. And then that is ready to go. So we're going to set that to the side, and then we're going to start working on the next piece of this, which is the vegetables. We have a hot pan and a tablespoon of oil, or a little bit less. And we're going to put our onions on. And our ginger. Our green onions. And be real careful. Ooh, I don't even want to use my fingers for that. And our habanero, or scotch bonnet if you can get it. And then that we need to saute just like we would any other thing. But remember, there's some real strong scents going to be coming off of this. So we're going to just let this saute, but don't get your face too close to it. You might regret that. All right, so now that these have sweated out, they're translucent, they're cooked well enough, they are ready to combine. So there goes our meat. Here comes all of our vegetables, including those peppers, and we got to combine. Now, if you wanted to do mild patties, you would just skip the habaneros, or if you want to do a bunch of them and you want to have some hot and some mild, what you do is you split. You make the meat just as you did, and then you split it, and you put half just as it was, and the other half you add this vegetable to be the spicy part. And now that that's combined, we have to let this cool, not necessarily to room temperature, but awful close to room temperature, because we're going to have to stuff these patties, and it's really hard to do when it's super hot with raw dough. So I will see you back at the workstation to work on the dough. So this is one of the sheets of puff pastry, and I have just floured my countertop here because I've got granite. If you don't, or you can take like a silicone mat or whatever it is you want to work your dough on, And I've got my rolling pin. And working away from myself, I'm just going to get this dough real thin. We want to try to keep it as square as possible too, although obviously the nature of a rolling pin is that won't necessarily work. But we're going to end up cutting it down. So if you get one as it's jagged like this one, not really a big deal. Just make sure that you have floured your base, otherwise you'll be scraping this off of whatever you're rolling it onto. All right. That's getting pretty evenly thin. So I'm looking about halfway. Make myself a cut. And depending on how big you're looking for, I think I'm going to make 3 out of each of these. And they won't be exactly square, but you try to get them as square as you can. And pull that guy away. Pull that one away. And this one. Make sure that it's all doughed up. Very nice. And then here comes the next piece. And again, I'm going to go to 3 slices. And you can make these really big or you can make them small for appetizers. Depends on what you're going to use the dish for. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and get everything ready so that we can cook, so that we can stuff them. All right, well, it's time to go on making or stuffing some of these guys. So I've got it here, and these ones will be kind of like snack sized. So I'm going to take a spoonful, because we don't want to overfill it, and I'm going to go up over the top, and I'm going to press it down. And now that it's pressed, I'm going to take a fork and not too close to this actual meat. I want to give a little bit of space off of the meat. And if that's getting a little sticky, you got to put a little bit of flour on there. You see, I am just creating a fork seal around this patty. And I'll flatten that out a little bit. It's all nicely sealed. So now I want to make a nice clean trim edge. And don't waste your dough, because you can save it to fill in or do whatever else you need to do. And now dip your fork in water, and you're going to make a pattern. She was very clear about the pattern as we break some holes in the top of this meat. And she said every one should have a different pattern. Although I suppose if you're going to make a bunch of different types, like hot or mild, you could definitely make your pattern so people could tell just by looking at it briefly what type it is. And now here comes the most critical part. You want to make sure that you're not going to break your patty as you move it to a seasoned baking sheet. So I'm going to get a little bit of flour everywhere, slide it underneath, and it goes on the baking sheet just so. So I'm going to make the rest of these, and I'll see you guys over at the oven. So that's about half of the total meat, and that made me 12 patties. So you can, and these are these kind of like snack size ones. If you want to make them bigger, I could probably have made 12 and made them just using up all the meat. But any extra meat that you have, you can certainly just you can freeze and use later. You can freeze these patties just like this to bake later, or you can bake these now, which is what we're going to do. So I've got that egg, which I've beaten, and made an egg wash. And if you find your egg wash is too sticky, you can always add a little bit of water to it and thin it out. This one's borderline, just about right though. And there goes the whole egg yolk right there. So let's pull this off so that it doesn't. We're gonna have some scrambled eggs on that one. These are very fresh eggs that I use. That has a little bit to do with it. Why the yolk and the white are so firm still. So these are going in a 375-degree oven for about 12 minutes, but we're looking for them to become golden brown. So you got to keep an eye on them. So we'll see you on the flip side of the oven. So these ones took me 14 minutes to get to this golden brown. Now, if you have done the dough yourself and used the turmeric, you're still going to want to pay a little bit closer attention because they start out looking that, sunburst yellow even when it's raw dough. So you just got to pay more attention to make sure that the dough is cooked all the way through. But as far as plating goes, we got to let them cool for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to pile them up on a plate because they don't last long enough for us to bother making them fancy. So I will see you back at the workstation. So these have cooled so that I can actually handle them, but before you give them to your guests, you want to make sure they've cooled just enough so they don't burn their faces off, because they are going to be hot in the middle. As you can see, these came out what I consider perfectly for something that I made and not being from Jamaica myself, and I think they're pretty delightful. Now, I assure you, this is something that you want to do at home. Don't wait. Get it going now because these are amazing, and you definitely want to try them. You can adjust the heat however you want it, right? Depending on how much pepper you put in or no pepper. You can use dips. The stuff that Maude recommended, like pick a pepper and a bunch of other things that I just can't get here in the States. If you happen to have a good Jamaican community out where you are, take a look at their market and see what you can find. But other than that, I tend to eat these things just straight up as they are. Maybe a little hot sauce if I feel like it needs it, but the way I made these, I'll bet you I won't need the hot sauce. I'd like you to give me a comment. Let me know how it goes. Let me know what you'd like me to do next. If you'd like, you can check my Facebook page for Dave's Delightful Dishes and see anything new that's going on, updates, and maybe some other stuff that might interest you. And other than that, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and tell your friends. And so I have to say thank you, Maude. Thank you very much for teaching me this, and so that I can teach everyone else how these work, as well as everything else you've done for me for my entire life. So, folks, I will see you later. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.